it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. I am ready to get fiery and it's time to sort of unleash a little bit. But before I do that, I want to just caveat that this will be about the Duggars. It is about a new article that was posted by People magazine, a revelation made by Jill Duggar. But we're not going to just talk about what Jill Duggar said in this article, but rather what this means. Because we need to go all the way back to the beginning to figure out how this family has continued to stay on TV despite the fact that there are humongous red flags and the fact that sponsors dropped them in 2015 and yet they continued on like nothing happened. So before we get into all of it, and I do want you to watch this video all the way through, make sure that you give this video a thumbs up. Also, do me a favor by subscribing to my channel down here if you like this kind of content. And if you want to know when I go live or when new content is uploaded, make sure you turn on your notifications. All right. So People magazine is releasing an exclusive interview with Jill Dillard, formerly Jill Duggar, about her time on Counting On, why she left the show, and why she has distanced herself from her very conservative family. The Duggars are from Arkansas and have been a part of the mainstream media or our TV airways since the early 2000s. In fact, their very first episode aired in 2004 called 14 Children and Pregnant Again. It was a 1-hour special that was an introduction of sorts into the Duggar family. This was then followed by Raising 16 Children in 2006. Another was 16 Children and Moving in 2006. A fourth episode of On the Road with 16 Children was in June of 2006. And so the pre-series of the Duggars started way back in 2004 when we were introduced to the Duggars in 2004 in a sort of 1-hour series episode called 14 Children and Pregnant Again, where we kind of meet the Duggars for the very first time. They also have 4 other episodes, which are from 2006 to 2007. In 2008, they actually have their series debut, and it's called, I think, 17 Kids and Counting at the time. So in that very first episode, that aired on September 28th or 29th, 2008, and the Duggars actually headed to New York City to be featured on the Today Show, and they went to Central Park, and they got pizza and that kind of stuff. So they go throughout all of these years. So they have 17, 18, and then finally end up at 19 Kids and Counting. We see the birth of the last 3 children, 17, 18, and 19, or 18. We see the birth of the last 2 children and her miscarriage of her 20th child. So Jill has been in the public eye since she's been 13 years old as a part of the show. Some of her younger siblings have been on much longer. In fact, or have been on from a much younger age, obviously, with some of them having never had a chance to ever be off camera. For instance, Josie's whole life has been documented and a part of this series. Think about that. Okay, so in 2015, there's this big scandal that comes out, and it's learned about what happened to Josh Duggar, right? So Josh Duggar's the whole investigation to Josh Duggar is broken by In Touch Weekly because they get their hands on police reports from the early 2000s, around 2002 and 2003, into an investigation of Josh Duggar into what he did to his younger sisters and one other person. So they obtained all of these documents through a Freedom of Information Act request, and in the redacted documents, it was clear that Josh admitted to doing what he did, and for whatever reason, they decided not to press charges. It's unclear why they made this decision. They were definitely not outside of the statute of limitations, and it was also in those same documents that they basically admitted that they didn't get any Josh would not be getting typical therapy. Instead, they sent him away to a Christian camp, a work camp. He never actually sought professional help. So this all breaks, but the fact of the matter is in 2006 and 2007, they actually make a trip to go see Oprah Winfrey before they actually have their regular series on Discovery. Josh does this stuff to his sisters in 2002 and 2003, and they keep it completely quiet. They don't report it to anywhere. They bring it to their church elders. People in their community know about it. They end up getting in trouble at church. I've been told they were actually kicked out of their church. And then in 2006, it's when Oprah steps in and finds out what's going on. In 2006, the Duggars, after having a couple episodes air, Oprah wants to have them at Harpo Studios to interview them for the show. While she's planning this, on December 7th, 2006, she gets an anonymous email that claimed that Josh was doing things to his sisters and they were not who they appeared to be. And the person that sent this message said, I think that you should know the truth before they make a complete fool of you and your show. So what Harpo did then was they alerted Arkansas State Police and they called the hotline. The Springdale Police Department then got a copy of that on December 12th, 2006. And that's when they actually brought up the investigation. And the investigation was brought to the Children's Safety Center on December 12th. And that's when they started questioning the Duggars. And Josh Duggar actually admitted to doing all of these things throughout this investigation. It was In Touch Weekly that released all of those documents and is currently still in the middle of a lawsuit with Jim Bob Duggar and all of his girls for what they say is a breach of confidentiality. Okay, so Josh Duggar basically admits everything. Oprah tips off authorities. And for some reason, for what I don't know, they decide not to charge him. They continue on as if nothing happened. Oprah reports them, but Discovery doesn't pull their support. Discovery doesn't decide to change. They don't decide to cut ties with them. They're just going to ride this out, allow this to keep going, knowing that there's a boy in this family that's doing these things, knowing that he's on the show, how do they not know, you guys? How do they not know? There's no way they don't know. If Oprah's involved in this and Oprah gets tipped off, you have to believe those same emails were going to TLC. I believe that TLC and Discovery Health likely just turned a blind eye and figured, well, if nothing happens, right? That's just my opinion. I have absolutely no idea what TLC knows or doesn't know. But after that all happens, they go along their way. They start filming the regular series in 2008. It runs until 2015 when finally that bombshell report comes out by In Touch, which basically outs the entire investigation that happened back in 2006 with what happened from 2002 and 2000. At the time, sponsors were furious and they were pulling support from the Duggars. They wanted nothing to do with the show. They wanted nothing to do with the network. They wanted the Duggars off the air. There was a humongous petition started to cancel the show. Viewers were not interested in watching anymore. They wanted this family off of the air. So TLC, bowing to public pressure, initially had no indications, had made no decision to actually cancel the show. In fact, at one point, they were going to just do some documentaries to deal with the aftermath and sort of work with people that go through this kind of stuff and provide resources. But after public pressure became so much and more of their sponsors pulled out, they actually end up canceling the show, and they issue a statement which says, after thoughtful consideration, TLC and the Duggar family have decided to not move forward with 19 Kids and Counting. The show will no longer appear on air. The recent attention around the Duggars has sparked a critical and important conversation about child protection. So, and they also said that although the Duggar series would no longer air, they did have plans for a 1-hour documentary. And that was supposed to focus on all these different things. And they said that they were going to bring in all of these experts to help explain all of this, bring in some support for the family, all this, that, or the other thing. So when they announced the 1-hour special, it ends up never going to air, but they say that they had consulted with, advocacy groups, RAIN, Darkness to Light, about, addressing the issue and making it into a positive impact. They were saying that SA was not an isolated issue. It affects many children. And they wanted to partner with organizations sort of on this multi-platform campaign to bring awareness to this, which then would feature the kids that were then outed as Josh's, you know what I mean? So TLC wanted to turn this into money. And then it never aired. So that never airs. They do come back with, after Josh's second scandal hits, and it's the Ashley Madison stuff. And at that point, his siblings are furious, and you see some of them for the first time just being very angry with him. But the show comes back. Instead, they branded it different. So they brought back Counting On. So what they decided was it was going to be a spinoff, and it wasn't going to include the parents. And the audience was told that instead of having mom and dad on the show, it was just going to be about Jill and Jessa. And we would see them going on with their lives. Jill was already married at this point. Jessa was getting married. Jill was pregnant. They were going to be the next generation of the Duggars. So this would enable the Duggars to maintain their fame, their power, their influence, and their wealth. So here's what all happens after that happens. So once that happened, TLC tells everyone Jim Bob and Michelle are not going to be on the show anymore, and it's only going to be the girls. Well, the contract was actually never with the girls, and Jill actually finally admits this to People Magazine. And in the article with People Magazine, this is what she says. She says that during her time on the show, she and her younger sister Jessa were never paid. So the series, which started in 2015, was supposed to feature just her and Jessa, and it was Jill and Jessa counting on. And she says that the sole payee for the show was her father. So Jim Bob was the primary payee. So basically, all they did was they took the contract they already had with 19 kids and counting, and they kept it. And then instead of changing the contract, or maybe they changed it slightly, they did not include the girls in the contract, and all of the money went through Jim. The money was not paid out to the kids. This show was started when the children were still minors, and therefore the contracts with the network were never with the kids. In terms of the Duggars paying their kids, they have absolutely never taken out, according to multiple searches I've done, they've never taken out work permits for their kids who are underage that are working. They place their children as considered as volunteers. They also don't pay them so that they don't have to take out work permits. And it appears as though no money is going into a trust for them. So they are not required to have trusts because they are not protected under the Screen Actor Guild. They are reality star children. They are considered part of a family that has a business. And so therefore they don't have to follow the same child labor laws, allegedly. Well, he at this time was making an estimated $25,000 to $45,000 per episode. Yeah, lots. Jill appeared in the first 6 seasons. She was in 46 episodes. And in that time, Mr. Duggar was making made around $3 million in money per episode. But that does not at all discount the fact that he was making millions of dollars in book sales, touring for speaking engagements, interviews. At the peak, before they all came crashing down, it was estimated that Jim Bob Duggar was raking in around $25 million a year. Not too shabby. He has all the money in the world to pay his kids, and yet he doesn't. So his kids are working for him, making him rich, and they're not paid. When Jill figures out that she wants to do things in her life, she wants to get a job, Derek wants to go here, they want to travel, they don't want to necessarily have to be stuck to certain things. They want they're getting married, they can't post their birth announcements, they can't post their sonograms, they can't make any statements unless they run it through the network and run it through their parents. They are literal puppets to Jim Bob, and they decide to leave the show. So during that time, when they leave the show, she goes to TLC, goes to her parents. It does not end well, according to Jill, and she ultimately has to bring in an attorney to recover the money that she was due. And she said it was quite the process in order to get paid. TLC has declined to comment about any of this, and the Duggars have only called this a disagreement. She said that it ended up being, this is what she said to People, it probably ended up being a little bit more than minimum wage, but we were able to at least recover something. And that all of this has taken a toll on the family. So my question in all of this is that if the Duggars are on this show for so many years and sponsors pull out because of Jim Bob and because people blamed Jim Bob as much as they blamed Josh. They blamed Jim Bob for not doing the proper, things to protect his children. They also blamed them for not getting him the proper, counseling. They blamed him for hiding this from the public. There was a lot of blame going around, and it wasn't just Josh, because Josh was a minor when all of this was happening. So people didn't want anything to do with Jim, and they didn't want anything to do with Josh. And we as a public thought, well, they're gone. It's just the girls, right? Well, the ratings of the show have never been what they once were, and a lot of people have tuned out. But this past season, the Duggars came back to Counting On as though nothing happened. And so are we supposed to forget as a public that in 2015 we demanded that they be removed? And now we learn that the money for all of these previous seasons of Counting On, which we thought were for the girls and for the kids and their future, have funded the monster that is Jim Bob Duggar, and he has not paid them. What responsibility on TLC is there? And at what point do sponsors start to realize that all of this has been a massive grift by the Duggars and TLC in conning the wider public that these kids were somehow being taken care of? How does TLC sleep at night knowing that they had working adults on their show profiting off of their name, and they weren't putting contracts in their name and paying them? How does a network that makes millions and millions of dollars off the name of Jill Duggar not have a contract with Jill Duggar that has a salary or a contracted fee? How do they continue to keep that contract in Jim Bob's name when he doesn't even see to airtime? He is not featured in those first few seasons. He's not there. So he gets all of the money for none of the work. How is that legal? How is that not forced labor? How is that not trafficking? How do you force an adult child to work and not pay them? And then when they want their money, you have to sue them. How is any of this fair? At some point, when Derek was coming out with all of this, when Derek was bringing all of the tea, everyone said that he was greedy. Everyone said he was lying. But Jill is saying the exact same thing. Is it greedy of Jill to want her fair share after her entire life was exploited? The birth of her first son, her wedding, her engagement, her courtship, all of that was for profit and she made no money? Imagine you putting your entire life out there and you make nothing. But everyone knows everything about you and you have nothing to show for it. And you walk away from the show and you have to recover damages by hiring an attorney. Not even damages, recover your rightful wage. At what point do these sponsors wake up and realize that this family hasn't changed? Jim Bob Duggar is still conning the American public. He continues to lie to the American public. His children are working for free. Sure, they get perks for being on the show, but no one should be on air working for free. With a family that has a name like the Duggars that have been on TV for 16 years, the fact that these kids don't have contracts in their names, don't get W-2s or 1099s, and that all the money is filtered through Jim Bob seems really criminal to me. So at what point do we start and ask these sponsors, why are you supporting the Duggars? Why are you supporting free labor? Why aren't these kids being paid? Why aren't there laws protecting these kids? Why aren't there laws for children in reality television? Kate Gosselin had to basically get her booty handed to her in Pennsylvania to actually set up a trust for her kids. Mama June damn near had to be forced to set up a trust for her kids. And from what I can tell, I can't find a dang trust for the kids for the Duggars. What does he do? He flips them a property. Oh, here's a house. You can have it for $10. How is that? And look at Jessa. Jessa has 3 children and she is living in a house with 1,000 square feet and 2 bedrooms. because she cannot afford to move. She needs a bigger house. She needs more bedrooms. Who has 3 kids in a 2-bedroom house when you are on TV and your family you're making millions? Her parents flipped a house last year and made over $1 million. And Jessa is living in a 2-bedroom house with 1,000 square feet because she doesn't get paid. She wouldn't be there just for fun. If you have the money, you would move. There's 0 reason for her to be in this house, given the fact that this family is on TV. Look at Ginger and Jeremy. They have a humongous house in Los Angeles and they pay $4,000 a month in rent. Jeremy has some money coming in. Obviously, he was a professional athlete and he's, a pastor, but they should be able to afford to do these things and they're not. So why is Jessa always their mouthpiece? Because Jessa needs a place to live. So when all of your family members are dependent on you, dependent on your mom, dependent on you giving them things and making you feel, you make them, so you're Jim Bob, you make your kids feel like their only method to getting paid is by staying on the show and getting freebies. And as long as you stay on the show and abide by dad's rules, you'll get those things. You never teach the children independence. You're teaching them dependence. It's control. It's forced labor, it's free labor, and it makes him millions. How is that legal? And why are they still on TV? I'm gonna still talk about it. I'm not gonna stop talking about this because this is horrible. This is terrible. And if you all wanna continue to live in a fantasy world and assume that this family is some huge, amazing Christian family, y'all need to wake up because it's not true. So, what do you think's going to happen here? I had this feeling that Josh Duggar was going to take down this family, but now I believe that Jill Dillard and that book she's writing and everything that she's saying, I feel like this is finally going to be the undoing of her father. And I honestly cannot wait for him to get off this air, to stop conning America, to stop conning the American public, to stop stealing from his children. I hope at some point, in some way, there are laws passed so other parents cannot do this to their children. And I hope that at some point, some way, he is held criminally responsible. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye, guys.